So, hi everyone. Welcome to the section about custom asset compute worker with Adobe Developer App Builder. My name is Dewey. I'm a software engineer in the AEM team. And today, together with me will be Dave Bench, who is a senior engineer. Will be the moderator in the chat box. So you will, if you have any question during the section, feel free to ask him there. Here is a brief agenda of the section today. I will start with an overview of custom asset processing in AEM, highlighting the important role of App Builder. We will go through a use case for which we need custom assets processing for. And finally, we come to the main part of the section, a hands-on demo of building the application from scratch. First, let's take a brief into the technical overview. This diagram shows the assets processing layers in AEM. There are some out-of-the-box profiles that marketing practitioners can select and configure directly on the UI. And if you have anything more than that, a developer will be needed to implement custom code that will be deployed on our runtime to run the custom processing. One example, as you can see here, is to call Creative Cloud APIs. AEM provides content automation as an add-on, allowing you to configure your processing profiles that applies Photoshop Magics at scale. Today, we will focus on the custom processing layer, which allows you to even do more customized tasks. So when do you need custom processing? The first scenario is when you call other Adobe APIs, such as Experience Platform and Sensei. In this case, all the API services are configured on console, and you might want to leverage the out-of-the-box authentication that's already supported by the Assets Compute service for this use case. Another class of APIs that you might use your custom worker for is the external third-party API, such as Product Information Management, in short PIM, or CRM system, to name a few. If you attended the keynote earlier today, you might have seen the demo by Dave adding product info to the assets metadata on AEM assets. Another major use case is when you need a customized workflow which should run independently outside of the JVM environment of AEM. For example, you want to apply multiple steps of image processing with Photoshop APIs. We will see more in that we will see more details into that later in this section. And before going deeply into the use case, let's have a look at the architecture of custom assets compute worker. In this case, AEM assets act as a client of the service. Changes in AEM are piped into I/O events. They are then pulled by the asset compute service as journals and dispatched to the custom workers to execute the task. Action on I/O runtime would run the code, get the new image renditions and metadata, and return them back to the binary cloud storage, which is synced with AEM assets. We will go into details of multi-step processing here, in which we first need to call the AutoTone API to process raw image from camera. We take the result of that to call Photoshop Action API to generate the custom promotional image with a predefined Photoshop Action script. And finally, the promotional image is color tagged by the content and commerce AI, which tells the color and their percentages to be required for printing. To get the clear results of each step, we will have 3 workers going from the most basic. The first worker only calls the Lightroom API to get the autotone rendition. The second worker gets the autotone rendition, which is then the input of the next API call to Photoshop API executed on the action script to get the promotional image. And then we come to the complete 3-step worker, taking the result from the second worker to call the content and commerce AI, get the color tag back, and save them as metadata in AM assets. All right, enough diagrams. Let's do some hands-on exercise. So I will open my browser on Adobe Developer Console. In order to create a new project, you will just go to the console and just select to create a new project from template. Then we have App Builder as the template for the project. Then you can name your project title as well as the app name. And by default, it provides you 2 workspaces for production and stage, which come along with out-of-the-box runtime namespace. Of course, you can create new workspaces for different developers in your team or for different purposes. So I already have my project created here, which comes with 4 workspaces. For example, let's take a look into the stage workspace. For the asset compute service worker, we will need, so there are some must-have services for this, including I/O management API, asset compute, I/O event, and the runtime namespace, which already come out of the box. Because we are integrating with Photoshop API and content and commerce AI, we will need those services as well in our workspace. We don't need to add asset compute journal because that is already that's automatically created by the asset compute service when we run the application. So we don't need to add that manually. So once we have the project and workspace created on console, let's head over to our terminal. So I will just use the AIO CLI app plugin init live demo. And the CLI will prompt with a few questions that ask us to select the IMS org for the application. So I'm going to select Adobe I/O. The next question is to select the project where we want to create the application. So I will select the custom worker work builder. And here there are several options for the extension points that we want to implement. Either that is DX Experience Cloud SPA that will be deployed on experience.adobe.com, or the asset compute worker to be deployed on AEM. So we will select the second option. And after this, the CLI will automatically get generate the code from the template, as well as install all the NPM dependencies of the application. So in the meantime, I will just open our app in VS Code. All right, so we have the code open now. And so let's open the terminal in VS Code while the code is being it's been bootstrapped. Let's see if it is completed or not. Okay, so all right. Now as the template code start to to pipe in, let's have a look into what it has. So first of all, because that is a Node application, it will have a package.json, contains all of the metadata as well as the dependencies for your Node application. And also because that it is an application created with App Builder, it also has the app config YAML, which basically contains all the extension references for your app. In this case, we only have which is the asset compute worker on the source/dx asset compute worker 1. So we will go there to see into details what it has in the extension. So there's the extension config YAML file that contain more details of your extension. So those include operation, worker process, the custom hooks for running the application locally, as well as the folder where the backend action are located, and also all the IO runtime actions that are defined here to run your custom workers. So we can have a look at one worker. Well, this is the default worker to be that was generated by the template code. What it does here is pretty simple. It just checks the existence of the source file, and it just copy one-to-one from the source folder to the destination folder on AEM. And of course, here you can add new custom logics for your worker to do things according to your need. One more thing here is that in order to run your custom worker, you will need to bootstrap your environment variable as that contains some credentials. I will just go to the I'll just go to an example code of my environment variable. So environment sample. What it has here is all the AIO runtime credentials for your namespace, including auth, namespace, and an API host. So all of them are already bootstrapped by the template. So normally you don't need to enter them manually. The same for the service API key, which is useful for calling the APIs that your application is integrated with, such as Photoshop API. What is important here is that you need to provide a few more environment variables that are useful for running your custom worker locally. That includes the path to the private key file for your integration, and the integration file that you normally download from the Adobe Developer Console. And then in order to run the local environment, the local developer environment of your application, you will need to configure either AWS S3 or Azure Storage that just create a local simulation of AEM assets for your developer to run locally. So let me just copy what I already provisioned in my app. In V, we just use the stage namespace and just copy over here. And I will use I will also use AIO CLI app plugin run to run the application locally. And what it does here is that it will deploy the worker action onto IO runtime, and it will spin up a local environment for developer tools that allow to interact with the workers visually. So in this UI, you can see on the top left, you can upload your images to the local, to the cloud storage of local UI. I already have a few images here, so I just going to select one of them. And under that, you can define all the renditions of your custom workers. So for the worker, for the first worker, I'm going to select, okay, so that's already have worker out the box, so I don't need to change that. And because that is a one-on-one copy from the source to the destination folder, so I just name it duplicate.png. And then I just click run, which is now triggering the iRuntime action to execute, and so that we get the rendition from the custom worker. So in a few seconds, we can see that now we have the duplicate.png, which is the copy of the source file into the new folder. Now we will try to add more code into our custom worker so that it does it will become the first worker in our workflow to generate the auto-tone rendition out of the source file. So in order to do that, we go back to the package.json because we need to add a few dependencies for our SDKs. For example, we need the Photoshop API to call the API behind the scene. We also need the AIO SDK for the files and so on and so forth. And because we changed the package.json file, we will run npm install again. And then in the meantime, I will just add a new terminal in a local environment in order to add the new custom worker. So we will also use the AIO CLI app plugin add action. Here it will ask to select which template of the action that I want to select from. And of course, we are going to use the Adobe Asset Compute Worker. Now we need to name the application, the worker. So it would be auto-tone. And then, yes, I want to override the config.yaml file. And then now if we go to the actions, we should see another one for auto-tone. So let's have a look at the code. By default, it just has exactly the same code as the previous worker because they both come from the template. We want to replace this by the new code that called the auto-tone. So I will just show you what it does. So in this new code, we will import the file SDK from App Builder that allows us to upload files to the cloud storage. We also need Photoshop client for calling Photoshop API and UEID for generating a unique ID for the 10 folders. This one is the same as before, just to check the existence of the source file, and we need to init the files SDKs. We create the 10 folder based on UEID, and we will copy the files from the source folder to the cloud storage so that it can be shared with Photoshop for image processing. And then we initiate the Photoshop SDK, and then with produce the Photoshop client. And with this client, we can call the auto-tone API and pull until the result is available from the undertone form. And then in the end, we just need to copy the file from the cloud storage back to the rendition folder of AEM and just do the final cleanup. So now we will just run AIO app run again, so that the new code is picked up by so that the new code is uploaded to our runtime, and also we have a refresh section for our local. Okay, so now the UI has opened. We have the same section as well. We have the same layout as before. And because now we have a new worker, we will add a new rendition to our definition here. And this one, we will call the autotone instead of worker. And then we also name it a new, well, we will give it the new name for autotone. And then we just click on run so that we have the new renditions. While it is running, we can also have a look on the right-hand side, the requests and the response of the workers. For example, the source folder, the rendition, what are the workers, and the name and target, and so on. And the response, which would contain the activation ID from our runtime. With this activation ID, you can either query your activation to debug, or to query the activation logs as well. So in here, yeah, it also calls the activation log to this UI so that we can investigate the behavior of the activation. And those are the two renditions that we got from the custom worker. So you can see that there's also the duplicate from the previous worker, and now we have a new autotone, which make the image brighter as expected by autotone. So let's assume that now we are completed with local development. We want to deploy the application onto our runtime, onto AEM assets. And in order to do that, firstly, in AIO app plugin, we also have another feature called get URL that basically return all the runtime URLs of your custom workers, and then we will use those URL for configuring on AEM. So I will go to my AEM UI, and under Tools, we go to Assets, Processing Profiles. And of course, here you can create your new profiles. I already got one profile called DevLive section, so I'm just showing what is under that. So in here, I have 3 custom processing services. One for autotone that is mapped to the autotone worker, and then the second one for the graphic design to generate the rendition, the promotional image, and then the last one is the metadata rendition that will produce the color extraction for our assets. And once you create the new processing profile, you can apply it to any folder in your AEM assets. So let's say I go to project, I have a folder called DevLive section, and I'm going to just apply to that folder. So I'm going to AEM assets now, under files, and then I go to project, DevLive section, And here I'm just going to upload a few images that we can test. And well, one of the benefit of using custom asset worker with app builder is that now with all the custom workers running, that is completely outside of the AMG JVM, so we don't use any resources of AM. We don't put any more load on the JVM, and this is really a separate process that runs on our runtime. So we have a few images here. Let's try with the bicycle to see if we have some new rendition out of it. So beside the default renditions in AEM, we also see now the auto-tone rendition, which would just make would brighten our bicycle to well, according to the auto-tone API. Let me refresh the page to see if now we have the second image, which is out of the graphic design API. So this is call to, well, this is the result of the Photoshop API executing Photoshop action scripts. So with this one, we can process further for any like banner or something. And the last step of this process is to extract the colors out of the image. So we go, so we open the asset metadata here, and yeah. So the colors name together with the RGB values are pulled from CCAI for to be attached in the assets metadata. And I think this concludes our demo today. Let me go back to the slides. All right. And I hope that this section is a useful one for you to get started with custom asset compute work on AEM. All the questions should already be answered by Dave during the section. If you have follow-up questions, feel free to post them on the Experience League forum. Dave will share the link in our section so that you can follow there. And yeah, don't forget to visit the booth in the DevLive website, and good luck with the competition. Thank you for your attendance, and yeah, have a good day. Bye bye.